Well, hello there. What I am going to do today is get ready for another blog post of mine, which will have like Keycloak, OpenID, and Apache for securing basically any web resource or web application. But before that, I need to prepare the actual infrastructure. You see, I have this whole dev project series going on where I will do a little bit of software development, a bit of microservices, a bit of databases, all of the interesting things. But before that, I really need to get started. And a part of this is provisioning all of the container clusters, some points of ingress, and then eventually to deploy various applications and perhaps authentication solutions like the aforementioned Keycloak. So what do I have so far? I actually have a domain. I will log into Namecheap. I will also go over to Time for VPS, which is where the actual servers are running. And so the idea is that I have a domain, devproject2022.cloud, and underneath it I have a variety of A records, which point to the IP addresses of the servers in question. These servers are already up and running, and what I would like to do is to be able to connect to them and to kind of, manage them remotely through Ansible, which is a solution made for automating configuration. And of course there's like cookies and all that stuff, so let's just kind of enter. Now we also had like the documentation. There's a video. I don't want the video, I want the docs. I don't want labs, I don't want the ebook. Project documentation, there we go. Oh no, why is there so much stuff here? There we go. Ansible.com. Community, ecos. This is weird. I don't want like 3 different sites. This is just too enterprisey. Oh, here we go. Here we go. So apparently this is like the community docs. And they have a helpful getting started guide. Okay, so in the case of Ansible, we have a control node, which is in our case probably going to be just a Docker container. A bunch of managed nodes, which we are going to push our configuration to, like installing packages, creating user accounts, and a bunch of other stuff. And then there's this whole inventory thing, which is probably just a bunch of information about how everything is managed, like groups and stuff. Now, they have some install instructions, and we probably want to create like the host file and stuff. So what are we gonna do about it? Well, I'll put the blog post aside for now, and we have this Ansible repo. So we could set up a folder structure, a little bit like what we have in the example. And let's create the host file. Actually, I could just open up the workspace, so I can mess around within it, right? And here we have the host file. And we're gonna have all. And based on how everything is laid out with like the domains and stuff, we're gonna have one group for DB, one for apps, and one for utility. And here we're gonna put in the host names, I believe, not just IP addresses, of everything that we want to access. So we're gonna have the utility server, we're gonna have the database server, we're gonna have 2 application servers, and for now that's actually it, right? We could scale out further a bit later, but for getting started this is adequate. There we go. This should be enough. Now what about the rest of the guide? Now I need to list all of the hosts. But to do that, I need to run Ansible. So what I'm going to do is probably make a Docker compose file. Docker compose YAML. So version, I really don't know. Now, I think the newest versions of like Docker Compose don't really need a version specifier, but you know, go figure. So, Docker Compose version. Yeah, 3.8. Let's go with that. 3.8. And under services, we're going to have Ansible. For Ansible, we're going to have a container image. You see, I also have a bunch of development Docker images that I can use in my projects rather easily, actually. So I'm just going to open up that repo and use this thing. Now, what else do I need apart from that? Frankly, I'm not quite sure. Okay, maybe some deployment constraints. We're gonna have resource constraints because we don't want to give this thing too much like memory and other stuff. And also command should be bash sleep infinite. So our goal here is to have a bash command that's just gonna sleep in the container. So maybe bash c and sleep infinity, something like that. So when I launch the container, it's just gonna sit up there and basically do nothing. For local development and testing will be launched and just sit around without doing anything. Aside from that, maybe we will want some volumes. So we're gonna take the etc folder and Ansible folder and mount it inside of the container at Ansible, like this. Make the repo contents available in available in container. There we go. Terminal, and here we're gonna do it like Docker compose up. We're gonna pull the Ansible image now, and then we're gonna be able to run Ansible. And of course, we are also going to need to set up some CI to do the same thing on the server instead of just locally. Now, the good thing about having kind of a slow internet connection is that I get to enjoy lots of tasty tea. It's the little things in life, really. I actually kind of wonder how much time I am going to need when like making a little development montage, you know? It's gonna be like Rocky. A training montage except of like setting up servers. Okay, here we go. We are creating the Ansible image, which honestly is just Ubuntu with Ansible installed inside of it. And we are attaching to it, of course, but we're going to create another terminal. And in this other terminal, we're going to check what Docker containers are running. We're going to see that we have this Ansible container running, so we can attach to it. So here we go, and bash. And so we get a bash prompt inside of the container. Now I should be able to list all the hosts. There we go. What we need to do next is set up SSH connections so that Ansible can connect to the actual nodes. For that, I have my own servers already available, and I can log in to them as root, which perhaps isn't excellent. If I look at the session settings, I should, most of the time, be using a private key, but instead, for now, we just use a password. honestly not great. But while you might leave this in for now, for Ansible, we are definitely going to want a bunch of like keys for logging into the servers. Now, technically we could have a different key for each of the servers, but we could also just use one to make it all like simple. So, if we go over here to the Ansible and try to ping all the nodes, they're gonna tell me that no, we can't connect because first and foremost, we do not recognize these remote servers, and secondly, we don't really have any way to authenticate ourselves. So I'm gonna need to create an SSH key and put the public part in the remote system. So create SSH key. So we're gonna have the probably SSH keygen command. I think DigitalOcean of all people had like a really nice tutorial. There we go. So there's SSH keygen which we can use. Now, instead of etc and Ansible, I'm gonna have a separate SSH folder. And I'm gonna run it here. There we go, SSH keygen. Now this is still gonna be an RSA key pair instead of the EC whatever, which is like the more modern one, but that is fine. As for the directory, we do not want to overwrite our current one, so instead I'm gonna have it be like Ansible. Just name it Ansible, or maybe Ansible SSH. Do we want the passphrase? This would be a good idea, but we would need to automate it. Or do we not? So Ansible SSH key passphrase. Now, this is kind of the first issue. If we are automating the login, that supposedly defeats the purpose of having a password, because we don't enter the password for the actual private key. However, I kind of disagree with this statement, because if someone steals our Git repo, that doesn't mean necessarily that they have stolen the actual CI configuration. So if I would execute this connection and like configuration management on a CI node, I might as well use the CI secret mechanism for passing in this kind of password. So this is not great. I dislike the fact that it just answers no. But luckily we can be lazy and claim that, oh hey, this is the idiomatic way of doing things, this is how it's like accepted. Well, no, we're not gonna use the passphrase. Private key file, and oh hey, this is kind of cool. Emojis for the various things that they've tried. Decrypt the key when you log in. Yeah, we're gonna just take the less secure approach. So no passphrase. And here we go. We now should have two files. We have the Ansible SSH and Ansible SSH pub. Now, as for our container, we probably are going to have to create the SSH directory under root, which we do not have here yet. Oh wait, we do. Okay, so we're gonna have a step to mount SSH keys for, the container. So we're gonna have the SSH folder, and we're gonna have the root and SSH. Something like this. Now, my issue with this is that the permissions are very likely to be kind of scuffed once we start out. So maybe, just maybe, what we want to do is create Docker entry point. Yes. So we go here and Docker entry point sh. And we're gonna have the shebang here, the so-called thingy. Now we're gonna go over to the other terminal and we're gonna destroy all of the current containers. So we can relaunch them and check whether technically we need the entry point and to fix the permissions on the SSH key files or not. So we're gonna have Docker compose down. And we're gonna have Docker compose up. Now this should also just throw us out of the container. So we can probably look at the container name and stuff. Oh wait, maybe I can actually go here and specify the container name. So container name, local Ansible, or maybe just Ansible. That should make me able to use the Ansible container and to connect to it without needing the ID. So let's drop some instructions. For connecting to this locally, you can use Docker exec interactive Ansible bash. Something like that anyways. So once Docker compose does its thing, we should be able to launch this command. But first, let's check. Okay, we have Ansible. There we go, we are in Ansible. Now, of course, the fact that we have these SSH keys does not mean that they are available on the remote server. So I will have the setup step, which is basically going to be SSH copy ID Ansible at server name. And I'm gonna have the key file just here, like Ansible SSH. Now you might notice that we actually need an Ansible user on the server. And honestly, this is a lot of steps, so we might as well just want to jot down some instructions for ourselves. So, getting started and adding a new node. First, you're going to need an SSH key. Now, the problem with Linux is that they have user add and add user, and I can never remember which one of those is the better one to use. One creates the home directory for you, the other does not, and I am a dum-dum and I have no idea which is which. So we are probably also going to Google that. Linux add user. So user add is here, and add user also here. Oh hey, add user is the better one. So we're gonna have add user Ansible. Or maybe we can just name it like app. Yeah, you know what, let's name it app. Because we're gonna have an app directory on the server, and this simplifies management like bunches. New group, new user, and so on, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go in SSH for all of these nodes and create this user. Darn it, a user already exists. I have done this previously. Oh no. Let's see what users are on the system. Yeah, we have the app user and we have my own user, which is such a bummer. I wanted to show this off. But yeah, we have the kind of app user now, and we can just copy the key to that user. So Ansible SSH is going to be app user on which server do we want? Well, we might just go over to the host file and also use this terminal. Come on, we have terminals here. We don't need a separate window. And my doggos are barking. So we create the user. Once the user is created, copy the Ansible SSH key to the remote server. server. Something like this. And we can actually use relative paths, so it's all a little bit like easier. Use the following path for the key. SSH. Ansible. Or maybe, you know, the suffix SSH. Just so we have a vague idea of what the file is for, because it doesn't really have an extension by default. Can we use a little bit of trickery to get all of these values? Then again, we have a text editor, really. That is probably all that we need. Something like this, right? Let's try it out and see whether this works. Oh, right. We can't use PowerShell. We would need Bash in particular. Can I? Oh, I have Git Bash. That is nice, actually. See? Different shells for different purposes. Just because of SSH copy ID being included in the Git Bash install. Okay, we want to continue connecting. And we are gonna get asked for the password for the app user. So we're just gonna copy it in. And we have added the key. Nice. And essentially this is one of the manual steps that we do one by one. Although we could also just take the public part and have like an echo statement for this in the sort of server init script, which would probably be a bit simpler, but hey, we can show stuff off live. After all, this is mostly a one-time process for any of these servers that you add. If I needed to do this for 20 servers, oh, I have fucked up. Then I would most likely have to figure out something like a little bit better. Like a bash script to automate this, surely. But, because we are not dealing with such complexity, we are done. It took a few minutes, we didn't spend hours trying to automate it all. So what we can do is we can now probably ping all of the nodes. Let's actually drop in the Ansible list host command and stuff as well. So, locally, you can use the Docker compose file. Docker compose up. Once started, you should be able to attach to it to use Ansible. So Docker exec it Ansible bash. And for example, you can run the list host command to check server connectivity. We are actually going to execute now. Can't establish the authenticity of the hosts. Now this is weird. There should be a way around this. So let's Google it. Of course, we don't care about our particular host, just the message in general. Maybe there's a way around this in Ansible in particular. Ansible. Now, of course, we might just take the, I guess, unique identities for these servers and put them in a file inside of the container somewhere. I wonder where these are actually stored, because for the SSH keys, the public parts that you use, there's the authorized keys file, but what about like server fingerprints? Linux SSH, where are server fingerprints stored? Let's have a look at that. Etc. SSH. Oh, okay. So for now, what do you mean unreachable? I want to continue connecting. Okay, so what can we do now? Well, we can connect to them manually. So SSH I root SSH Ansible SSH, like this. Yes. So we get errors about the permissions. So this is the problem that we're gonna need to solve. So we're gonna need the entry point. So echo fixing SSH permissions, which is just gonna be like chmod. What was it, 644 or something? SSH key directory permissions. Google the error message again, and it's gonna give us like posts about how we're supposed to like fix them. 400. Do I want 400? I don't know. 600. Yeah, that should be fine. So we're gonna do like chmod recursive 644 home root SSH. Maybe instead of command we should have like the entry point instead. Bash C sleep infinity echo startup finished waiting. And we don't need the separate bash invocation. So entry point is gonna be a workspace and docker entry point sh. And we're gonna mount the entry point. And perhaps these mounts actually should be read-only. So docker entry point sh, and it will be under workspace docker entry point sh read-only, something like that, you know. Now normally we would bake this image, but because all of this is highly dynamic, a bind mount would probably just be fine. Also, we should probably drop instructions for testing this thing, like the actual keys. You can test connection in container by SSH I home root SSH Ansible SSH app server. I'm curious about how you give Ansible a custom named SSH key, because maybe instead of Ansible SSH I should use the ID RSA standard convention, just so I wouldn't run into problems where it doesn't pick up on it automatically. So yeah, and just ID RSA, why not? And then I won't even need the custom key here, like in the container. So let's start this up, and I should see in the output. Oh wait, no, I should not see because it broke. Oof, what did I do? Like we mounted in the correct directory, but it doesn't pick up on it like during startup. So maybe the storage is attached later, like after the startup. That might be a cause for some of these issues. So the alternative is that we are probably gonna need to build our own container image. So we're gonna have Docker file, image for using Ansible, separate image just to bootstrap the entry point and SSH config, something like that, from my current Ansible image. I don't think we even need to tag it, it's just gonna be like a single image. So work there is gonna be like workspace. And apart from the workspace, we are gonna, we're gonna copy the Docker entry point to work there, Docker entry point sh. Something like that. Set up entry point, and we're gonna have it be executable, I believe. So chmod +x, and yeah, the full like path. Maybe we can just group it here. I can probably look at my other Git repos to figure out how the entry points work elsewhere. CMD. Maybe entry point. I don't really know. What was the difference? Docker difference between entry point and CMD. There we go. Based on this, it seems like what I need is the entry point. So, instead of CMD, we're gonna have like workspace. And this. Yeah, like this. Okay, and now in the Docker Compose file, we're gonna need to specify, what was it, context and build. Docker file, and context is the current directory. And we're always gonna build it, always. Just because the build should only take a few seconds, if we actually have the image available. It would copy the files and set the executable flags, and that's it. It's quite literally it. And it complains about not having such a file. What the heck? I mean, I do have the entry point here, and I add it to the... Oh no, not work there, workspace. Yeah, I sometimes mess around with the container-like paths. Oh, and Docker ignore would also probably be a good idea, you know? And it once again straight up breaks. Why? Now, if I look at Docker itself, it's gonna give me more information sometimes, unless it hates me. Maybe I need to get rid of the entry point mount, and then the rest should be fine. Sometimes I find myself wishing that it would just be easier to figure out what causes errors in computers, right? Like, oh hey, this file does not exist. You tried to access file at this path with this command and everything else. Permission denied, unknown. Oh wait, oh no, there is like -x, not +x. So I am removing the executable flag. Oh no. Why are you like this? If it works now, oh, it doesn't work. Thankfully, it is still broken. Bin bash. Well, what, do you have problems with the interpreter path, maybe? What's wrong? exec format error. Do not tell me that all of this is because of the incorrect line ending. Oh wait, maybe not home, but root. So basically, my entire problem was this one little sneaky boy here, the line endings. And basically everything that broke because of the interpreter being read wrong, because there were additional symbols at the end of the line which are platform dependent. Windows has 2 characters, Linux has 1 character, and as a consequence a container with Linux inside of it just utterly decided to die. Oh, and I can't change permissions of the SSH keys if I mount them as read-only. Yeah, I'm gonna have to kind of stop this and rebuild it again, and then it's gonna work. Startup finished. Waiting. Okay, so does this work now? So let's try it. Okay, I don't need that. I might want to try and use the SSH keys to connect to one of these servers. So if I go over to hosts, I'm going to try this. The permissions are too open. What do you mean? Like if I go over here to root.ssh and look at all the files, so read, write, execute for the owner, read for the group, and execute for... You know what, there's this chmod guru thingy. Or like an online thing where you can... Oh yeah, just calculator. So no reading for public, no reading for group, 600. That's what I want. There we go. So once again, we are killing the containers, we are rebuilding them. Now this might seem like needless messing around, but because my development box is on Windows right now, there aren't many other options. Plus, if I get things working here, doing the same on like the CI server will be way easier. Here we are. And bad permissions. What do you mean bad permissions? What do you mean? Look, we're gonna go here. And these permissions are still the original ones. What the heck? What is this? They're just utterly ignoring what I'm telling them to do. chmod recursive. chmod recursive. Maybe I'm using the command wrong. No, I'm using it correctly. I don't have sudo inside of the container, so I don't need it. Okay, you know what? Let's try to do it bit by bit. chmod 777 id RSA. It just refuses to change the permissions of these files. So what I get might be the problem here is that I cannot mount stuff from NTFS inside of the container, which expects like ext4 or something. So most likely I'm gonna have to add this directory as a part of the container build, which is very not great. Like seriously, persisting SSH keys inside of containers, typically not a good idea. Copy. Something like this. Okay. My hope is that once we rebuild it, it's gonna start working correctly. Okay, startup is finished. We are waiting. CD, let's go to root. Let's go to SSH and let's see the permissions. The permissions are now working correctly. So our entire problem is basically caused by the fact that bind mounts are evil. And of course line endings are also evil. That's just the way things are. Pain. So now we should be able to test our connection. Okay, it works. Nice. So what about Ansible itself? Can we ping the servers? And it complains that the authenticity cannot be established. Maybe we need to connect to them manually, then look at what is created inside of the SSH directory. See, we now kind of figure out the fingerprints. And then in the SSH directory, we can just take the contents of those files and put them in the Git repository. So we can then, you know, trust these particular servers. For trusting nodes, you will want to take files from, so where would they be? Okay, maybe like under root, known hosts. Okay, there we go. There we go. That's a lot of records though. I only logged into like 4 servers. What the hell? Why are there 8? This makes no sense. I have a file like that in the directory already, but it has 2 lines instead of... I don't friggin' get it. Why are these different? Why are parts of them different? Like, they're basically the same for like certain parts of them. Like these 2. Why aren't the host names here? You know what? It's friggin' magic. Let's just leave as it is. Make sure to log in first and preserve root SSH known hosts. Now, thankfully, this is actually done for us automatically as a part of, you know, checking the connections as well. So now the whole Ansible ping command should like work. Famous last words. No, unreachable. Wait, why are you trying to connect as root? So I need to change the user that Ansible uses to actually connect. Where do I do that? Ansible change user, Ansible change user, SSH user. Because we don't want to administer the users on the server yet, we instead want to change the default user. Okay, so inventory file hosts. There's a playbook, there's a bunch of other stuff. Oh, we can just specify it like this. Okay. App. Is this better? There we go, we get some ping pongs. It only took me 1 hour and 6 minutes to ping a server. Big brain. Actually, there's a Ansible CFG file somewhere. So what if I go to etc. Ansible, like CD, and look at stuff here. There's just the host file. Maybe just like hosts replaced with like this. So we can like rebuild this thing and try to do it again. And if there are like defaults, we should now have the defaults in the folder. Recreating, fixing permissions, startup finished, and waiting. Good. We're gonna open bash. We're gonna go to etc. Ansible. And now we have the Ansible CFG. Oh, that's a long file, is it not? But you know what, let's just do it the old-fashioned way. Ansible CFG. And then take everything and just kind of copy from the output buffer in the terminal. If it works, it works. But absolutely, we're gonna switch the line endings this time. And yeah, we're also gonna put the Ansible CFG file there. There we go. And what about the user? Oh yeah, we can customize like a lot of stuff. Everything's kind of commented out by default. Living documentation, if you will. So Ansible will also need to be able to execute passwordless sudo. vsudo. What was the correct syntax? It used like vi or vim or whatever to edit the sudo file, like the sudoers file. However, it ran some validation so you don't like ruin your server. Yeah, and I have already done it. So basically, we just take this and put in at the bottom. Yeah, this looks okay to me. Ansible check become. I don't want the playbook yet. I need a command line example. I don't think there is like a command for this though. Okay, Ansible CLI test if root works. No, there isn't such a thing, I think. Oh well, we can always just kind of do the lazy thing, which is SSHing into the server. So let's just run a lazy test and check it that way. So we go over to hosts, we connect one of the servers, and sudo who am I is gonna be what I want to run. Who am I? Oh, it asks for a password. Oh wait, no, I don't need Ansible, I need app. Yeah. But then I want the app user to be able to use sudo. Now that's a bit more difficult. Honestly, I don't even need the Ansible user, I can just have this as app. Because we are gonna do what works, not what is fancy. There we go. Oh, now it works. Without a reconnection even. That is kind of fancy. But yeah, I think that this is a reasonably simple setup. Okay, this is a setup that won't make me go insane as long as it keeps working and as long as I can build upon it. But honestly, as long as you have some very, very basic documentation and a few instructions that you can automate, you should probably be fine. Plus, I can now manage an arbitrary amount of servers with Ansible, which will have benefits that we're going to see later, both locally through the Docker container as well as on the CI nodes that I'm going to use. So overall, still a success.